Somewhere in the hill country of McCurtain County, on a piece of leased hunting land that has been worked by trappers, helicopter crews, and state biologists for years running, there is a number that refuses to move in the direction it is supposed to move in. Every season, the traps go out. Every season, the corral sets are baited, checked, emptied, rebaited, moved to a new stretch of bottomland when the old one goes quiet. Every season, a helicopter goes up over the river bottoms with a shooter leaning out the door, working a route that has been refined and reflown until the crew can call out a fresh rooting site from altitude without slowing down. And every season, when the dust settles and the next survey goes out, the population has not shrunk to match the effort poured into it. In some counties, it has held steady against everything thrown at it. In others, it has kept climbing anyway, as though the entire operation, expensive and coordinated, and staffed by people who genuinely know what they are doing, were being fought to a standstill by something the paperwork never accounted for. That is not supposed to happen. Feral hogs are not some ghost species that slips past every method built to catch them. They are loud. They are destructive. They leave a trail of rooted up pasture and torn fence line that a landowner can read from the porch without ever seeing the animal itself, sometimes overnight, sometimes across an entire hayfield in the space of a single wet week. The ground churns so completely it can look less like animal damage and more like something driven across it on purpose. Oklahoma has thrown real money and real manpower at this problem. Aerial gunning contracts, statewide trapping incentive programs, bounty payments, cooperative agreements between ranchers and wildlife agencies that did not exist a generation ago and that took years of lobbying to put in place. On paper, an animal this visible, this heavily hunted, and this intensively managed should be in retreat. Somewhere between the paperwork and the pasture, that retreat keeps failing to show up, and it has been failing to show up for long enough now that people who make their living off this land have stopped assuming it is just bad luck and started asking out loud whether the entire approach has been missing something from the beginning. The reports did not arrive as a single alarming season. They built the way most of these patterns build in the hill country, one landowner comparing notes with another at a feed store or a fence line conversation, one wildlife biologist noticing that a county with a supposedly successful control program was still filing damage complaints at the same rate 3 years running. No real improvement showing up in the numbers a rancher actually cares about, even as the official removal totals kept climbing on paper, a mismatch that took a while for anyone to say out loud, because on the surface the program looked like it was working exactly as intended. A rancher outside Idabel, who paid for a professional trapping crew, 2 years in a row, watched a fresh sounder move onto the same pasture within a season of the last one being cleared out, as though the ground itself were simply waiting to be reoccupied the moment it emptied. A hunting lease in Pushmataha County that used to see hog sign concentrated along one creek bottom started finding it spread across 3 separate drainages, as if the animals had learned the creek bottom was where the pressure came from, and simply relocated the operation somewhere the traps had not yet been set up to reach. Further north, along the edge of LaFleur County, where hog activity had been sporadic at best for years, landowners began reporting fresh rooting on ground that had never shown a track before, with no creek, no thicket corridor, and no obvious reason for the animals to have traveled there under their own power. None of this looked like failure exactly. It looked like something adjusting in real time to being fought, learning the shape of the pressure and moving around it, rather than simply absorbing it. The first explanation offered, and for a long while, the one that satisfied almost everyone who heard it, was simple biology. Feral hogs breed at a rate that makes almost any other game animal in the state look sluggish by comparison, a fact wildlife agencies have leaned on for years to explain why this species gets treated so differently from deer or turkey in terms of hunting rules. with no bag limits and no closed season anywhere in the state, because the assumption has always been that the animal could not possibly be overhunted under any realistic level of pressure. A sow can be pregnant well before her first birthday, can produce more than 1 litter in a single year under the right conditions, and a litter itself can run large enough that removing even a large fraction of a local population in a season still leaves more than enough breeding stock to rebuild the numbers before the next count. Under this reading, the traps and the helicopters are not failing. They are simply outmatched by arithmetic, fighting a reproductive rate that no removal program, however well funded, was ever going to outpace on its own, the same way bailing water out of a boat with a hole in it can look like real effort without ever actually keeping the boat from sinking. That explanation held up for a long time because it did not require blaming anyone's methods. The trappers were doing their jobs. The aerial crews were hitting real numbers, sometimes numbers high enough to make the evening news in a good season. The math was just working against them from the start, and there is a kind of relief in that version of the story because it means nobody involved needs to change anything about how they are doing the work. It just means the work is harder than it looks from the outside, an explanation nobody in the field had much incentive to question until the numbers themselves stopped cooperating with it. Then the state's own data made that explanation harder to lean on entirely. If sheer reproduction were the whole story, removal effort and population trend should move together in a fairly predictable way, more pressure buying at least some ground, even if not a full solution, the way a determined bailer at least keeps the water level from rising even without patching the hole. That is not consistently what shows up in the county-by-county figures. Some of the most heavily worked areas, places with years of sustained trapping and regular aerial operations, show population estimates holding flat or even edging upward, while a handful of less intensively managed counties nearby have seen numbers drop without anything close to the same investment of time, fuel, or manpower. Reproduction alone does not explain why effort and outcome have come apart so cleanly and so unevenly in specific places rather than everywhere at once. If you have hunted or worked land in hog country and watched a formerly reliable trap site suddenly go cold for no reason you could see, drop the county in the comments. The pattern people are describing on the ground is moving faster than any official survey is keeping up with. With biology alone ruled out as the full answer, 2 other explanations have moved in, and wildlife managers have not been able to fully separate them, in part because both leave almost identical fingerprints on the ground, and neither one is easy to confirm without watching an individual animal across multiple seasons, something almost nobody has the budget or the patience to do consistently across a landscape this large. The first points at the animal's own intelligence. Feral hogs are widely regarded, even by biologists who study far more celebrated species, as unusually quick learners under pressure, capable of associating a specific piece of ground, a specific smell of bait, even a specific vehicle, with danger after a single bad experience. A sounder that survives a trapping event does not forget it. Survivors have been documented becoming markedly harder to catch the second time, avoiding corral traps they walked into readily before, shifting activity to darker hours, when neither a trapper nor a helicopter crew has much chance of finding them, splitting into smaller, more mobile groups that are harder for a single trap site or a single aerial pass to catch in bulk. Under this account, the state is not simply losing a numbers race. It is training an increasingly trap-shy, increasingly nocturnal population every time it removes the least cautious animals first and leaves the more evasive ones, the ones smart enough to survive the first round, to breed and pass that caution on to the next generation. The second explanation is less comfortable to say out loud because it points at people rather than the animal. Feral hogs are, to a certain segment of hunters, a resource worth protecting rather than eliminating, prized for the challenge of the hunt and for meat, and there is a long, well-documented history in multiple states of hogs being deliberately trapped alive and moved to fresh ground, specifically to seed new hunting opportunity where none existed before. It is a quiet practice, almost never witnessed directly, leaving behind nothing but the effect, a county with no prior hog history suddenly showing rooting damage with no obvious corridor the animals could have walked in from on their own. Wildlife officials in Oklahoma have said plainly, when asked directly, that they believe at least some of the unexplained new activity in counties that had gone years without a confirmed sighting did not arrive on four legs at all. It arrived in the back of a trailer released quietly on leased land after dark by someone who had no interest in the animal ever being controlled, and every interest in making sure there would be something worth hunting there next season. Nobody working this problem can tell you with confidence how much of the failure to make ground belongs to reproduction, how much belongs to an animal getting smarter about the exact tools built to catch it, and how much belongs to people undoing the work on purpose faster than any agency can track. And that uncertainty itself is part of why the fight is stalled, because a program built to fight one problem will always underperform against three. The reproduction theory explains the baseline persistence almost everywhere, the reason even a well-run program can never fully stand down. The learning theory explains why specific, once productive trap sites go cold in a way pure reproduction never would. A site that worked for 2 seasons, suddenly worthless in the third, with no biological reason for the ground itself to have changed. The human relocation theory explains new populations turning up in places with no prior hog sign and no obvious corridor for them to have walked in from, the kind of gap in the pattern that neither breeding rate nor learned caution can account for on its own. All three survive contact with the data that exists. None of them survives contact with the others cleanly enough to be declared the whole story, and every biologist willing to speak plainly about it will tell you the same uncomfortable thing, that Oklahoma may be fighting 3 separate problems wearing one animal's face, and that solving any one of them completely would still leave the other 2 quietly rebuilding the population behind its back. What is not in dispute is the outcome on the ground. Landowners across the hill country and increasingly beyond it are learning that a controlled program working exactly as designed, staffed by competent people using the best tools available, can still leave them looking at a pasture torn up the same way it was torn up before any of it started. The agencies involved are not claiming victory, and to their credit, most of them are careful not to overstate the ground they have actually gained in public statements or annual reports. What they will say, when pressed past the official talking points, is that this animal has stopped behaving like a simple pest problem and started behaving like something closer to an adversary that studies the response and adjusts, season over season, faster than the response itself can adjust back. There is a version of this story that wants a single culprit, an easy villain to point at and blame for a problem this expensive and this persistent, and Oklahoma has not been given that version. What it has, instead, is a slow, layered failure with at least 3 separate engines running underneath it at once. Biology that outpaces removal in the easy years, intelligence that erodes the tools built to fight it in the harder ones, and human hands quietly working against the whole effort in ways no survey was ever built to catch. Every landowner who has watched a cleared pasture fill back in has their own theory by now, shaped by whatever happened on their own ground. The trapper who swears the animals got smarter, the neighbor convinced somebody is trucking them in on purpose, the biologist who keeps coming back to the arithmetic because the arithmetic never stops being true, even when it stops being the whole answer. None of them are wrong exactly. None of them is the whole answer either. The traps keep going out. The helicopters keep going up. Meetings keep getting held about funding levels and removal targets for the next fiscal year built on numbers that assume the fight is at least holding steady when the people actually walking the pastures are not always sure that it is. And until someone can say with real confidence which of these three forces is doing the heaviest damage to the effort, and until that confidence comes with a plan built to fight all three at once instead of the one that happens to be easiest to measure, the honest answer is that this fight is not close to finished, and the animal currently winning it was never supposed to be this hard to beat. If this is the kind of investigation you want more of, the channel keeps pulling at the parts of this story nobody has fully explained yet. Subscribe and stay close, because the next one might already be happening on ground near you on a pasture somebody thought had already been cleared for good.